Hello and welcome to another Symbolic Studies live stream. I am Mario. Welcome back. I just did a stream yesterday about the Tower card. It was part one, I suppose. And, once I was done with the stream, there were a few things that I wish I would have brought up. And so I figured there was enough information to just do a follow up stream. And then a good friend of mine, a buddy of mine, Dave, Moonlander2 in the chat, he sent me an email and he included like a bunch of thoughts about the stream and specific cards. And I thought it was fantastic feedback. And so I figure I would share that stuff as well. So if you have not seen the stream from yesterday, I definitely recommend that you check that out because we went over every single card in my collection, every single tarot tower card, excuse me, in my tarot collection. And so I think there's something like 23 or 24 cards or something along those lines. And anyway, so I think that there was a lot of good information in there. But as I said, there were some things that I failed to mention that I really wish I would have. But either way, it's neither here nor there. It gave me an opportunity to do this again. And before I get started, I just have to say the tower theme for me is it's been kind of strong lately because even just this morning, as an example, I live in a forested area, and just this morning, our neighbor's property, which he has a lot of acreage, but they are cutting down some trees on his property. And so there are tree fallers there. And so early this morning, I heard chainsaws and huge, massive trees falling. And it just reminds me of the tower card, right? And even one of the cards that I shared yesterday, it's a tree instead of it actually being a tower. And there's a lot of symbolism with the tree as it relates to the tower, right? And so there are trees falling around us. And even for the last like several weeks, I've been collecting all of these branches. And because we're making a fence and we're using just natural materials, and so I've been hauling and cutting down all of these branches and small trees and things like that. And so it just reminds me of the tower kind of coming down, right? The sort of destructive kind of nature of Mars, and how destruction, as I talked about yesterday, is just a necessary part of life. So what goes up must come down. It's very much part of the creative process, gathering raw materials and things like that. So anyway, all of that is to say is that I just feel as though the tower card specifically is like in my life, and I would say just kind of in the best ways too. So I'm very stoked just where things are right now with our friends project, with our fence project and all of that. So anyway, before we get started here, I do have a couple of quick announcements. Basically, if you want to support the channel, you can like, subscribe, or send over a super chat if you're so inclined. All of this stuff helps the algorithm, and if you just like what I'm putting out there, it would be very much appreciated. Also, I have a Patreon, so patreon.com/symbolicstudies. I've got, I think, 20 something patrons right now. And I just think it's so cool that they find value in my work. So if you find value in what I'm putting out there, that is one way to support the channel. So I have all of the cards that I brought up yesterday still here in this slideshow. And then I actually included a few more cards, right? But a few of the things that I wanted to bring up is that, one of the themes that I discussed yesterday was the fact that it required a lot of energy to build all of these towers, right? And that's for later. But it took a lot of energy to build all of these towers. It was a collective effort. And I related that to the Tower of Babel story and how these people were a united front, and they came together to build the Tower of Babel. And obviously, this required a lot of energy. It required a lot of resources. It required a lot of time, right? But one of the things I failed to mention is the fact that the concept of work or even works, right? There's a tarot card called Works, the Three of Discs. Um, the idea of work is really strongly related to both Aries and Mars. And so even the Babylonians, their interpretation of Aries, one of the alternative names for Aries, the ram, was actually the hired man. And so there's this implication with the ram that he is like a working animal. And so I think of draft animals, right? The animals that will pull a cart or pull a wagon. Generally, draft animals are, horses or ox, right? Which is like a castrated cow or bull. And you can also look at the ram as a draft animal. And so he is the animal that basically pulls the rest of the zodiac behind him. And so he is the first animal, in the astrological new year. So the zodiac, right? People have said that zodiac means zoo disc. It's a disc of zoo animals. And so most of the signs are comprised of some sort of animal. Obviously, there's exceptions to that. Virgo, as an example, is a woman. Libra is scales. Gemini, it's twins. But there's a lot of animals in the zodiac. And the first animal is Aries. And so there's this correspondence with Aries being a hired man. And just thinking out loud as well, during springtime and during the summer, there is more labor to be done. We associate some outdoor activities with the return of the sun. So clearly during, winter, you're more so going to be indoors and you're more so going to be relaxing and staying warm and all of that stuff. And so it's just very interesting to me that the beginning of Aries, the beginning of the astrological year corresponds with Aries, and he was once called the hired man. And it just makes me think of all of the effort it takes to build these towers. And so it also makes me think of the energy or effort required to actually bring down one of these towers. So in the Tower of Babel story, as I mentioned yesterday, they had been working on this tower for 43 years before their languages were introduced, before all they heard was babbling from each other. So before God intervened and decided that they could no longer communicate with each other, that this project needed to come to a halt, they had put in a ton of effort, but yet it all was brought down very quickly. And so I think that's just an interesting contrast. The amount of time it takes to build a tower, right? And then with this card, the amount of time it took to bring it down, right? Obviously, lightning flashes happen in an instant. And since we're on this card, I just want to point out something that a friend mentioned to me. So I brought up my buddy Dave. He sent me a nice chunky email with some thoughts regarding some of the cards. And yesterday in the stream, I wondered. This is the Barbara Walker version of the card, by the way. So that's from, I believe, 1986. And here you see these two figures falling down from the tower, as is common with the tower card. And I wondered, I'm like, the figure on the left looks a lot like the Emperor, but I couldn't figure out what the figure on the right was. And I had not gone through her deck to kind of, solve that puzzle. But Dave actually informed me that he thinks that it's probably the Hierophant, which I think is really interesting. So what I did was I scanned the Emperor card and I scanned the Hierophant, and here you can see the Emperor and the Hierophant or Pope right here. And so clearly you can see the Emperor, he's wearing red, he has that hat, he's wearing those leggings. I mentioned in my Emperor card video how effeminate a lot of these emperors tended to look, especially a lot of the older emperors. And here you can see the Pope, and he's wearing this yellow outfit, and then it's kind of like this robe thing, this blue robe, and then he has that yellow hat. And then if we go back here to the card, you can see that this actually lines up nicely. That the guy on the left is the Emperor, and it looks as though the figure on the right is the Pope or Hierophant, just without that blue shawl or that blue fabric that he has over his yellow coat. And so Dave was saying, could the figure falling along with the emperor be the Hierophant, thus depicting the downfall of both the earthly church and state? Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's religious iconography on this tower. You can see the cross on top. And then also here, Barbara Walker calls this card the House of God. And so here, the House of God is coming down, and it is the Emperor and the Hierophant which are falling from it. So I think that was an excellent observation, and I think that makes a lot of sense. That does look like his little hat right there falling off his head. And once again, you can just kind of see it right here. It even has those blue, or excuse me, those red little ribbon things on the side. And so I think that's pretty much a really, really great match, if you ask me. So good call on that one. Also, the other thing I wanted to mention is if people have been following my work, you'll know that I've gone on about the stairway to heaven existing at the north, going from the northern portion of Earth to the northern sky. And I said this with some of the cards that have this very powerful eye on top. There's a couple of cards that have eye symbolism, and that this eye to me is probably emblematic of Polaris, the pole star, the eye of God, right? And what I wanted to mention is that when we're dealing with the tower, it's covered, but it's implied that there are all of these steps within the tower. I mean, how else are you going to get from the lowest level? How are you going to get from the ground all the way up to the very top of the tower? You're going to do it via stairs, specifically a spiral staircase, right? And so to me, the symbolism of the stairway to heaven and the tower is very similar. And so that is what I've been saying for a while, is that the stairway really is another symbol for the world axis. And so the stairway to heaven concept, it's a legitimate thing. I've gotten into this in several videos, several presentations now. In my Illuminati symbolism video, I think I do a pretty decent job breaking that down. And so even though clearly when we look at towers, I just think of the exterior. I think of a skyscraper. I think of a building. I think of other similar structures that just shoot up to the heavens. But I think it's kind of worth noting that all of these towers have staircases within them. And the staircase is like a really important symbol within Freemasonry as well. And so in a lot of Freemasonic works of art, you're going to see staircases. They like to use 3 steps a lot of the times, and they like to use staircases symbolically for all sorts of different reasons, including kind of illustrating the different levels of Freemasonry, the different degrees of Freemasonry. So you can look at certain charts where they're showing you, you know, the different degrees, and they're using the stair analogy to show you what the different degrees are within their system. And so, as I also mentioned too, all of these towers, you know, they're built brick by brick. And so brick symbolism is directly related to masonry, which is directly related to, obviously, Freemasonry. So when you look at bricks anywhere, especially obviously just with older buildings, with ruins and things like that, with pyramids and towers and stuff, it makes sense that there would be such a rich history and so many things to pull from regarding brick symbolism and masonry, right? So that's all I wanted to say regarding this point here is that there is a staircase within the tower, which is how people ascend to the top of the tower, which to me just reminds me an awful lot of this idea of the stairway to heaven, because these towers were symbolic of stairways to heaven. You know, it's this bridge from the above to the below. And so they wanted to commune with the heavens. They believed that they wanted to reach the glory of God. And they believed that they were worthy of that. But in the story, God felt otherwise. And so that's why I think there's such a nice parallel between the Tower of Babel story and what's going on in the Tower card. Another observation that I wanted to make that I think is interesting is that just like with what I showed just a few moments ago with the Hierophant, there are a lot of cards in the tarot that show twin pillars, right? Twin towers. Very much the same thing. So you will see that in the Hierophant card. You're going to see that in the High Priestess card. You're going to see it in several other cards, right? These twin towers. The Death card, a lot of times, has twin towers in the background. And so this is a common sort of theme that is very much present in the tarot. And when you're talking tarot, you know, you're basically talking about the Kabbalah, you're talking about esoteric Judaism. And so a lot of people, especially when they're new to the tarot scene, is they don't understand that, or they're not aware of that at all. And so isn't it interesting, right? Once you start learning about this stuff, it's very obvious, but there's 22 major arcana cards. There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. This is a Kabbalistic system, basically. And so the two towers is very much a part of Judaism and the Kabbalah, right? And so even as an example here, I've gone over this before, but you can see there's two trees of life here. There's one on the left and there's one on the right. One is shaded, the other one is just outlined. And so you're seeing two different trees of life. So arguably, to me, the one on the right is the tree of life. The one on the left is the tree of death, the clipothic tree of life, the inverted tree, right? But you see within that system, there's basically three towers. There's one on the left, there's one on the right, and there's one right in the middle. So the one in the middle transcends and goes above and below the other two towers. So the middle pillar really it's the way. So the middle pillar is a gateway, it's an opening, it's the middle path, basically. And so just what I wanted to point out was that the two towers in tarot, and here even you can see that door right there, and there's two pillars on the sides, right? The yellow pillars. But there's always an implied third pillar. And so what I wanted to say was that I've noticed a pattern, and perhaps you guys have too, but I've noticed a pattern within the tarot, and I guess just within Western occultism, that the two towers or the two pillars are more well known and are more so represented in various works of art and within the tarot. But the single pillar tends to be, I think, either ignored or misunderstood. So when you're talking about twin pillar symbolism, you have to talk about the individual pillar. When you're talking about the twin towers, you have to talk about the individual tower. And this is something that I've noticed for like a little while now, where I've really gotten into this single tower, single pillar symbolism. And I've related it to the world axis, as I explained yesterday. And to me, it's just really fascinating that I think what has happened is that the single pillar or the single tower, I think, is almost like a throwback symbol. And that at a certain point, the single tower fell out of favor for whatever reason. I think it has probably to do with heliocentrism, because I think the single tower is more of a geocentric symbol. I think the cosmic axis or the world axis is more of a geocentric symbol. And so when you're dealing with the single tower, when you're dealing with that single pillar, I think it's more geocentric in nature. And when you're dealing with the two towers, I think actually you can make the case that that is more of a heliocentric sort of understanding. And so I just find it fascinating that the one major instance, if unless I'm mistaken, and there's something else in the major arcana like this, but the one instance of the single pillar or the single tower is actually being brought down. It's being destroyed. So it just makes me wonder if this is kind of intentional. And so I also mentioned yesterday that the world axis has a correspondence with the Garden of Eden, with the origin of humanity. It has a correspondence with the northern portion of Earth. And there seems to be something that is naturally sort of a pattern with the single tower, and that this is where people congregate. This is where people come to. A lot of times, single towers are emblematic of a sacred center, if you will, and certain cultures, certain groups, villages, and whatnot might have something symbolic of this sacred center in the middle of their region. So sometimes it's a mound, sometimes it's a tree, sometimes it's a tower. And so this point is kind of where people used to commune. It used to be where people would trade and where they would meet and do business. It's where various rituals might happen. There's a fantastic book that I've recommended several times. It's called At the Center of the World. And this guy, John Michel, he really gets into all of this stuff. And so the single tower or pillar or tree, the world tree, it's symbolic of unity. It's symbolic of this. It's a holistic sort of idea. So it brings people together. And so I think it's a powerful symbol. There's a reason why I've been going on and on and on about it for the last handful of months now. And I just think it's a very curious thing that the single tower, when it is shown, it's actually being destroyed. And so my basic general understanding is that when people were living in a geocentric reality, when they believed that Earth was center stage and that the heavens were revolving around this central axis in the sky, that the tower or single pillar was revered. And then, as I said earlier, it went out of favor and people's focus shifted and changed. And so now in today's world, the sun is looked at as the center of everything. So we are taught about a solar system in school, but in actuality, I think that a lot of ancient peoples didn't believe in a solar system. They believed in a polar system, as in the pole, as in the North Pole that extends to the North Star, which is the pole star. And so, anyway, I know people who have been following my work will understand what I'm putting out there. But once again, I just think it's very curious that the indication or the symbol that represents this pole or this polar axis is actually being destroyed. I think there's something to be said about all of that. So that is another point that I wanted to bring up. And so also, I mean, 9/11, guys. I mean, so to me, thinking about the Twin Towers, being brought down, however you think that happened, I mean, there is absolutely a correspondence between this card and those Twin Towers being brought down, and it being such a significant event and a heavily publicized event. And that is just me being very vague about what happened there too. There's a lot to talk about with all of that. But the thing that I was reminded of, though, a lot of people like to point out that there is one figure falling from one of the towers on 9/11, and he looked exactly like the hanged man. His legs were crossed and he was falling head first. But I mean, this scene here with all of these people falling from the top of a tower, it reminds me of what happened um, on 9/11. And so I felt like that was worth bringing up as well. And so the other thing I just wanted to mention, since we're here right now on this card, so Dave also wrote me and told me that this deck here, which I absolutely love, this is the Golden Art Nouveau deck. He just mentioned to me, which I think is awesome, just to kind of have this heads up about it, but that the artist who created this deck, which is freaking awesome, that they're actually coming out with another deck, and he is the main artist. They are the main artist, and it is the Egyptian Art Nouveau tarot. And so I just thought it was worth just kind of bringing it up. And I had not seen this artwork yet, but I think it's gorgeous, man. I mean, I know a lot of modern Egyptian stuff. It's very westernized. It's whitewashed, but this to me looks fantastic already. So I'm a big fan of this artist. And actually, I saw some of their earlier work, and I just think that they're like on fire right now. I mean, to me, this looks gorgeous. So I'm very curious to see what this looks like. I'll definitely be picking this one up. So yeah, so there's that as well. The other note that I have here that I wanted to talk about was the fact that when we're dealing with the tower, there is a correspondence with our bodies. There's always whenever you're dealing with, I guess, anything, honestly, any kind of symbol, there's an internal correspondence and there's an external correspondence. And so the tower, as far as I'm concerned, if we're going to talk about it with how does this relate to me physically, I would say that our tower is our spine, basically. So there's a direct correspondence between this tower being a world axis or cosmic axis symbol and also our spine. So even too, I feel like it's implied with this crown here, right? With the crown being blown off the top of this tower. And so yesterday I mentioned the idea that there is an orgasmic quality to this card. It does remind me of ejaculation. That crown is being blown off. I know the energy is kind of coming from above, but there are cards where it almost looks like there's like an explosion on top of the tower, and the top of the tower is just exploding, right? And so this reminds me of ejaculation. And so I think there's a lot to be said about that. And also too, I know this is way more of a psychological thing, but ejaculation has been compared to a little death. And so to me, there's a correspondence there. There's a correspondence between ejaculation and even honestly, and I would say warfare, and so you're sending your soldiers out, to battle, and they're competing against each other, right? And so the sperm cells, I mean, to me, they go, they're swimming head first, right? And so also too, just the hormones and just everything involved with sex and sexual energy. And the fact also that in order to have an erection, you need blood flow. And so in one of my recent presentations, I was talking about blood and the emperor and bloodshed and war and aggression, and also the fact that men have more iron in our blood than women. Women have more copper in their blood. And iron corresponds with Mars, the planet of war. And so to me, the erection sort of correspondence here is very obvious and appropriate, I would say. And also penis being an anagram for spine. Shout out Jenny G for bringing that to my attention. I think that's really interesting. And so phallic symbolism, gosh, guys, it can just be seen all over the place. And so I think it's appropriate to bring it up here, right? And so there is that sort of idea that I wanted to bring up. And then also just the idea too that our spine corresponds with this idea of kundalini energy. And so the twin serpents going up your spine, our spine is a bridge. It's like the bridge within our body from higher to lower. When you look at the chakra system, right, you're going to see the seven chakras going up the spine. And so I think that there's something to be said about this card and Kundalini rising and that whole entire concept. And so, in that whole entire practice, going from the base chakra to the crown chakra. And here you see that crown up top. And I've also made the case too that I think the pineal gland is actually a correspondence. The correspondence out in the macro side of things would be the pole star. And so I think that the pole star is symbolic of your third eye, and that this idea of a middle pillar might actually be the first pillar. And so I think that there's something going on with all of this. And when you see just a singular tower, you are looking at either the first pillar or the third pillar in the Kabbalistic tree of life. And so to me, there is that also going on. But the Kundalini energy, I think, is definitely a thing. And I think that you can just kind of see it. You can see aspects of it, at least, in this card. The other thing, too, I'm just going over the notes from yesterday after the stream. But this idea of building a tower to reach the glory of heaven, there apparently, and I'm going to do follow up research with this because I'm very, very curious, but apparently there are multiple myths involving a people building something together only to have a deity or God himself, the supreme deity, thwarting their plans. And so I was listening to a Bible scholar, and he was going over all of these different examples of the Tower of Babel story in different books. And this is what he was mentioning. He was mentioning that there are actually other cultures that have very similar myths. And so to me, the fact that this idea of building a bridge to the heavens, it's nothing new, but I was unaware that there are other myths around the world where the collective effort is put into building this tower uh, only to be halted by God or some other deity. And so I think that's a fascinating thread. And oftentimes, what this does is the unified people, they're broken up. And so then after their plans are halted, they are scattered about. And that is kind of a thing. So there's, once again, a unification element with the tower, but there's also this separation element with the tower. And you're definitely seeing in the tower card, you're seeing that separation sort of element in full effect. So this dissolution or this dissolving sort of idea. So Baphomet, right, on his arms, he has coagula, and solve. This would be the solve part, the dissolve sort of aspect. Coagula would be the coagulation, the bringing together of things. And so, and this apparently, this is what just happens here. Things come together and things break apart. You can't really get around that. And so we are seeing things being broken apart here. And then, one of the other things I wanted to mention too is this as above, so below correspondence with the tower. So let me find a good one here. Yeah, I like this one because it's just showing a lot of the ground, actually. And so my understanding is, as above, so below. I think that a lot of, a lot of buildings and a lot of projects that ascend upward, whether it be an obelisk or a tower or a skyscraper, something like that, oftentimes there is an underground component. So it's really no different than like a tree, right? So if a tree is going to shoot upwards, it's going to need to have really strong roots. It's going to need to have deep roots. And so as above, so below. So there is an underground component, I think, arguably, with these towers symbolically. This one here, it almost looks like the underground sort of aspect of it is just like right there for everyone to see. But that is something that I've understood for a while now. Did not mention it yesterday, but it makes sense that if you're going to build something this large and this tall, that there would be some sort of underground aspect to the tower. And that's just how it works, I think, with all things that are tall, is that there needs to be roots. A tree needs to have roots. So if you're going to build a tower that's substantial, obviously you're going to want to have it in the ground fairly deep so that it can be stable and secure. And so it just makes me wonder then, about this sort of idea of this underground aspect to the tower. So as above, so below. I think that's part of the deal. There's a lot of buildings in today's world that have massive, absolutely huge underground portions to them, that go down multiple stories. So, if you have the energy and the effort and the know how to build it this tall, you probably have the energy and the effort and the know how to build it down deep as well. So, there is an underground component to the tower that also exists. So, to me, that is kind of intriguing just to think about. And I did not mention that yesterday, but it's something that came to mind after the presentation. And then also, let me get to some of the notes from my buddy Dave. So we mentioned the Barbara Walker side of things. Oh, okay. So he had something really intriguing to say regarding the Jodorowsky deck, um, which is right here. So this is like an updated Marseille deck, but he actually was referencing just kind of a lot of the Marseille influence cards that I showed. And this is what he says. So he says, the dots in the sky remind me of a 1561 depiction of an aerial battle over Nuremberg. This has me wondering if the original creators of these Renaissance era decks may have been familiar with that illustration, or maybe even witnesses themselves. And he says in parentheses, I'm not saying it was UFOs that inspired these depictions of the tower's destruction, but it was totally UFOs. Laughy face. And so I know what he's talking about. I have not seen that image or illustration in a while, but exactly. I mean, there are illustrations that show these dots in the sky, and that it's depicting like basically flying saucers or aerial crafts of some kind. And so is that what's going on here? I'm not sure. Were they inspired by that illustration or that happening? I don't know. What I do know, though, is that there are lots of interesting things in the sky. So I haven't really talked about it here, but for a number of years, I had military grade night vision goggles, and I've seen all sorts of wild things up there, things that I cannot explain. But I think actually kind of getting into the symbolism of ufology and of that whole narrative, I think could be worth our while, because like I've said, I've seen a lot of different things over the years. So I just thought that was an interesting take. I think it's good to, compare and contrast what you're seeing here with other works and see maybe if there's a fit. So that's what Dave saw here as a potential inspiration for these dots. What I was talking about yesterday was mainly that it reminds me of, atmospheric energy of some kind, perhaps static electricity. I've heard that's a thing just before a lightning strike. So I also said that it could be a quote unquote buzz in the air. Perhaps it's that, perhaps it's something else. I don't know, but I thought that was worth sharing. And then Dave also had a thought regarding the Montaigne deck. And this is what I believe to perhaps be the correspondence with the tower, given the fact that you're seeing a broken pillar. I got into the difference between the broken pillar and the solid pillar. And what he said here is, bringing up the strength card got me thinking the phrase tour de force could be translated literally as tower of force. What could that mean for us here? The phrase, as commonly used, is almost always positive, describing a performance or feat of exceptional skill, like building a great tower to the heavens. But I wonder if it could also carry a warning not to let the praise for such an accomplishment make you too prideful, for, quote, pride goeth before the fall. Exactly. How many Greek heroes were brought down by the gods because of their hubris? Excellent points, dude. I think all of that's fantastic. Especially too, the thing that really sticks out for me is tour de force and tower of force. The tower and tour being related to each other. Very, very interesting. And yeah, I agree with you with everything else. So that is all well taken. And then he also had something to say regarding the one of the first cards, which is the Ethereal Visions deck. And he says, I thought of pride and hubris and putting on airs brought me back to the mask in the Ethereal Visions deck. I wonder which would draw down the wrath of God more, daring to build a tower to approach God or daring to approach God with a false face. And then he elaborated on that in a follow-up email. So he said, my clarifying thought of the mask and the ethereal visions, just thinking of the sin of pride, but also vanity. Like if you're going to dare approach God, you'd better be humble, or you'd better approach as your true self and not a phony. So yeah, exactly. I could see all of these points, man. So good stuff. I was just stoked that he sent me an email, very thoughtful, insights. And I figure since I'm here, I'm talking about some of the stuff I was noticing after the stream, I might as well include that. So, guys, I think as far as my notes are concerned, that's what I had. Those are the things that I wanted to bring up. And so I knew that this wasn't necessarily going to be the longest stream. They all don't have to, but I figured since I had the time, I would just talk about some additional thoughts. Once again, if you have not seen the stream from yesterday, give that a go. I'm going to check out the chat for a few and see who is here, see what's going on. So if you're here hanging right now, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Looks like Poor Man Jones was here or is here. Stacy Sunshine, hello, hello. And then it looks like Bubs Bird Bear is here. What's going on? PK, what's up, dude? Tiffany, hello. Yo, what's up, Kyle? Kyle from Tippy Canoe Herbs is here, or he was at least at one point. And then Cub Star is here. My Cherie, hello once again. She's always down to hang and listen to me ramble about symbolism and stuff. Evil Fandango, what's up? What's up? Let's see, anyone else? Onam, hello, nice to see you. Sweet. Astro Pillars Astrology is here. Hey there. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I have for you guys. Just a quick one, a quick follow-up with some of the things that I kind of wish I would have mentioned yesterday. I think it would have woven in pretty well with some of my other thoughts. But yeah, so it goes. All right, so if you guys have anything that you want to add to the conversation, feel free and do it now. And I'll put that on screen, or if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm pretty good keeping it short too. So like I was saying, not all streams have to be super, super long. And it is a beautiful day over in my neck of the woods too. And there's work to be done outside and everything else. But I think this was worthwhile regardless. All right. So, oh, interesting. So PK is saying in some reflexology charts, the tip of the penis equals the pineal. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I could totally see that. So Poor Man Jones wants to know, are you going to do this with every card in the deck? You know, I really should. And I kind of like, I don't know, there's something about doing streams and it's just like a straightforward sort of thing. I just scan the images, bring them in Photoshop, upload the slideshow. I really don't have to overthink anything. So I figure I probably should. And more than likely what I'll do is try and keep the presentations in line with the season we're in. And so Aries season, it made sense to talk about the Emperor. Also makes sense to talk about the Tower. So I already pulled all of my Hierophant cards to the side, so I have those ready to go. So it could be next week. We might do the Hierophant. It could be the following week where I do the Hierophant. And so, at the very least, you can expect to see the Hierophant and Gemini, the Lover's card, excuse me, for Gemini season. So yeah, I think so. Hey, dude, Gabbiano Nero, hello, ciao from Italy, Italia. Nice to see you. Um, so Tiffany here says, I think that one card of the tower depiction is interesting with the Emperor and the Hierophant. Yeah, that's the Barbara Walker version. Kind of reminds me of the stripping away of ego, false self to meet God. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what some of what Dave was talking about with his comments there, for sure. And then Tiffany's saying the lightning bolt being the awakening. Yep, definitely see your point. There are so many different, multifaceted layers with all of these cards. It's absolutely nuts. And so, I like really appreciate everyone's insights and input with all of this because I can be kind of like one track minded and I'm like seeing things a certain kind of way, and then other people bring things to the fold and they're like, oh, what about this and that? I'm like, oh, of course, absolutely. I've known that for years, but I didn't even bother to bring it up or even think about it necessarily. Hey there, Elvis. Yeah, is that the Thoth deck card? Yes, that is the Thoth deck card. Um, and so it's a really powerful deck, and it's one of my favorite tower cards. I think it's really, really interesting. One of the things I brought up about it yesterday is that it looks very confusing. It looks very chaotic, and one of the kind of nicknames or alternative names, I guess, for the Tower of Babel is the Tower of Confusion. And so a, a chaos and destruction is very confusing to people, to our human brains. Seeing something being destroyed can feel very chaotic. And but again, it's a necessary side of everything. But I think that this card beautifully depicts the chaos. So even I think I remember the first time I ever saw it, I was kind of like, whoa, what is going on here? I mean, there's just a lot of energy completely packed into this card. And actually, honestly, just thinking out loud, it might be the most energetic card in the whole entire deck. Super, super powerful. I feel like it's just kind of like popping off of the canvas, really. Yeah. So PK, you asked what alchemy stage of the tower card might be last stream. Yeah, totally. And I saw your comment. I don't know if you want to like copy and paste your comment, but I'll show it on screen right now if you want. But he was talking about the dissolution process, if I'm not mistaken. So, which makes a lot of sense. Mars also under the traditional system corresponds with Scorpio, and so Scorpio corresponds with Negretto. I really wish I had all of the alchemical steps memorized along with the signs, but the fact that Mars corresponds with Scorpio, that corresponds with Negretto. It's the blackening and the breaking down of things too. I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it, but it would make sense that this is also kind of like a similar sort of thing. Maybe not necessarily the exact same step, but kind of a similar sort of idea. Right. Yep. That's Yaldabaoth on the upper right hand. Yep, for sure. The Demiurge. Exactly. 100%. Hey, Cozy Crone. Nice to see you. Thank you for swinging by, saying hello. A great supporter of the channel and of Michelle, my girlfriend, and her channel. Right. So Elvis is saying Abraxas 16 after the devil 15. Yeah, totally. I always, when I was trying to memorize the tarot, I was like trying to come up with, I can't remember the name, but you're kind of creating like a poem or lyrics or something like that to memorize the order. And one of the things I remember is the Devil's Tower, and so the fact that they're kind of right next to each other is interesting. Also, the devil, there's a lot of phallic energy with the devil for sure, and it's right next to the tower, which is very phallic in nature. And so also just saying regarding the phallus and regarding the eye, does it not look like a phallus going towards a yoni, right? And so it looks like a phallus going towards the vagina. So that's kind of an intriguing sort of thing. So it's the masculine meeting the feminine, but also, like I said yesterday, the yoni shape, the yoni symbol, it's a projector and a receiver, just like the vagina as well. And so it receives and projects. And so it's receptive, but also things come from it. Children, excuse me, childbirth. And so I think that that's potentially part of the deal here. I think that's intriguing. So, right. And then Albus is saying Yahweh was an archon to the Greek Gnostics. Yep, exactly. So this God figure could very well be just the demiurge. And so that could be the correspondence. You know, this card is called the House of God and things like that. So all of this stuff completely related. Absolutely. So Tiffany is saying, I feel like we are witnessing the tower energy at the moment on our world stage, false foundations being stripped away. Perhaps. Yeah, definitely. I'm not even so much, I used to follow the news way more closely years ago. So I'm kind of unaware of some of the things that are kind of going on. I just know that we live in clown world, you know? And so, yeah, I'm sure that's definitely the case. Well, that's kind of the thing too. I'll just say that perpetually things are always being created and destroyed. You know what I mean? So just all the time, the tower card is always present because it's just the other side of life. So you can't have life without death. You can't have creation without destruction, etc. So they're very much in a symbiotic sort of relationship with each other. So PK here is saying the obvious consequence of the dissolution of a structure, whether that of a metal or a mind, is the death of all it supported, and the physical result of this produces chaos. It is from chaos that the labor of the alchemist begins. Nice, nice. I like that second part there, that last part. It is from chaos that the labor of the alchemist begins. Yeah, totally. I'm just going to read it again for myself. Sometimes I need to read things a couple times to completely digest the information. The obvious consequence of the dissolution of a structure, whether that of a metal or a mind, is the death of all it supported. And the physical result of this produces chaos. Totally. Gotcha. Yeah. Absolutely. So it's funny. Order ab chaos, order out of chaos. And then from order, we also get chaos. So when that order goes away, you know, what goes up must come down. What is created must be destroyed, sort of thing. And so I almost kind of like there's this constant churning, or it's almost like we live in, it's like a, what is it called? It's like it's been referred to as like a cosmic heap, but it's almost like this it's like a recycling sort of thing or whatever. Like all self-contained systems, even the torus field is very much like that. Energy is being projected and then received, projected, received, received, projected, and so it goes out from itself but also returns back to itself. You know, the red shift, blue shift, white hole, black hole sort of thing. So let's see here. Just reading the chat. Cool. So, one second. Oh, so here is being asked, what's your opinion about the number 16? You know, the first thing I think of is the fact that actually it's interesting. 16, if you just add the numbers together, 1 + 6, you get 7. And so there's a lot of stuff having to do with the number 7 and ascension and going to a different plane. I think the number 7 also relates to like a psychopomp sort of energy personally. I've talked about this in other streams. I have a stream called 7 Gates to the Great Beyond, right? And so there's this transcendental quality to the number 7. So I'm glad you asked this because the number 7 relates to the 7 planets, right? The 7 traditional planets, the 7 days of the week. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, they each have 7 stars, correspond with the northern sky. They exist in the northern sky. Even the Pleiades has 7 stars. One of the fascinating things I've learned over the last couple of months is the fact that Orion arguably has 7 main stars. And so 7 is just, it's a very, very powerful number. But the idea is that there are 7 layers between this reality and what I refer to just generically as the great beyond, to the other domain, so to the spirit realm. So we live in the realm of matter and physicality here, but there is this other reality. And I think personally, I mean, when you're looking at the night sky, I think you're looking at the spirit realm. And so I think we've been tricked into thinking that it's actually more physical than what it is. So I think that we're taught that we can go on a rocket or a flying saucer and go to these different places and inhabit it and terraform the land and things like that. But I think actually it might be a little more etheric in nature than that, than what we've been kind of shown or taught. But the number 7, there's metaphors saying that like there's 70,000 veils between us and God, things like that. So there's always this, there's 7 steps or there's 7 transitions between this domain and the domain of the underworld, or the domain that you go to upon death, basically. So the number 7 is a very, very interesting number that way. 16 in and of itself, I don't know if I have too much to say about that. Obviously, I can do some mathematical things. You know, it's twice of 8, 4 times 4. So it does imply the stability and the structure as well. But I think of number 7 immediately, personally. But I'm sure there's other people who are more into numerology and gematria and stuff who could run circles around me regarding the significance of number 16. All right. Yep. Cool. Awesome, guys. I think that's going to do it. Thank you so much for being here, for hanging out for this quick hour stream. I've got some stuff to go over at the end here, as per usual. Some credits, if you will. The first thing I just want to acknowledge are all of my patrons. So thank you so much if you're a Patreon subscriber. So including all of the people here. So I've been saying that I have such few patrons right now. We're small but mighty. But I have, enough of them to be, of course, I'm grateful for all of you guys. But there's so few people that I can actually shout everybody out. So thank you, Amy, Troy, Amanda, Chance, Abby, Nicholas, Yakov, Monica, Nomad, Sarah, Julia, LS, Judy, Barbara, Adrian, Crystal, Christina, Eloise, Mia, Kurt, Lockstep, and my newest patron, Claire. Claire came through, I think, this morning or last night. So thank you so much for joining us over there on Patreon. And if you want to become a patron, you can do so at patreon.com/symbolicstudies. Everyone gets a study packet. It's a 4-page PDF study packet with all of these elemental correspondences. I had a good time putting this together. There is a lot of solid information in here. Conversely, you can actually just donate any amount and I'll send you a study packet. So if you don't want to join Patreon, I totally get it. So if you're interested in this, though, you can send me a donation and just include your email address and I'll send you a link. Also, Symbolic Studios. I've been a graphic designer for 20 years and I'm available for design work, whether it be logos, sigils, or anything related to digital or print media. So I've done so many things over the years, guys. Everything under the sun that you can imagine with design work. I've pretty much done it. So if you're interested, hit me up. If you want a designer who maybe is more symbolically literate, I totally get it. And so I'm your guy if that is the case. And what I've decided to do is start showing you guys some of my artwork, on these streams. So this is the logo that I'm showing this week. So this is for Rose Dragon Healing Arts. And so this was a logo I did for a client last year, just to show you kind of, some of my artwork. And speaking of artwork, though, this is one of my poster prints. So I've got a few prints available on Etsy. It's going to take a long time to finish, but the idea is to finish one poster print for each sign of the zodiac. And so this is my Taurus print. The idea behind this project, by the way, is that I wanted to create one poster per sign, and I want it to be encoded with so much information that you can literally give a lesson about that sign using that artwork. And so this is my Taurus print. So there is a Taurus field behind her. You notice that her hair turns into the Taurus field. There's interesting symbolism behind that. You can see that she's breastfeeding. Cows are known for being the second mother of mankind, especially in India. You see the 7 stars above her head. This is related to the Pleiades. You see that lotus right there in her lap, right? And so you see the 2 keys down below. This is a reference to the gate of, the silver gate and the golden gate. You also see these keys on the Hierophant card, which corresponds with Taurus. So there's a lot of things actually baked into this artwork here, right? And so this is my Taurus print. So all prints are hand signed, and they all come with a little sheet, and it's a symbolic breakdown sheet. So literally, I give you guys a sheet that tells you what's going on in this print. So if you get this print, you're going to learn more about kind of esoteric Taurus symbolism. And so we are in Taurus season now. So I figured now would be a good time just to remind people that I even have this stuff out there, because I actually don't talk about it that often. I'm sure once I get the whole series done, whenever that is, I'll talk about it more. But for now, you can find these on Etsy. And you also get a study packet, a printed study packet, and then you also get a bookmark as well. And the bookmark is pretty cool too, because it's like a little correspondence sheet just in and of itself. So that's my artwork for Taurus season. I'm also available for tarot readings and study sessions. So you can hit me up at 503-893-4606. Send me a text if you're interested. Tarot readings generally are a half hour. They're organic. I try and teach people the tarot if they're interested. And that's kind of one of my goals too. It's like, I think going to somebody for reading is awesome, but if I can empower you to read for yourself when needed, that's kind of one of my goals. And one of my goals is just to always ladle on the gravy if I can, and just kind of inform you about some of the esoteric symbolic aspects of the cards that maybe you're unaware of. But I try and keep tarot readings, I like to keep it as a two-way sort of conversation, a two-way street, if you will. And so I like to know who I'm reading for. I like to know what they're going through. So it's a very personable sort of session where we really just kind of we talk about what's going on in your life, and whatever your question might be, we really hash it out, versus I know there's other tarot readers that pretty much just want to talk at you, which is fine. There's lots of different styles. That just happens to be my style. Also, study sessions can come in a lot of different flavors. I just recently got hit up for a study session to help someone decode a painting that they just purchased, or a work of art that they just purchased, which is Freemasonic in nature. And they were like, I want to know what I just bought. So actually, can we do a study session and you tell me about some of the symbolism in this work of art? And I'm like, hell yeah, that sounds like a great time. And funny enough, the piece that they bought, I've already talked about in other videos. So it's just kind of perfect. So study sessions can come and be what you want it to be, basically. If you want one-on-one time to talk about symbolism or book recommendations, anything like that, I'm pretty much down. If you feel like a one-on-one conversation would help you in your journey, in your symbolic journey, let me know. Snail mail. So if you want to send me a letter or anything like that, you can do so at P.O. Box 930, Carson, Washington, 98610. And also, my girlfriend has a podcast called The Healing Home. So she is here on YouTube at Michelle's Healing Home. She has, I think, 22 episodes that she's done now. She interviews people. She's an herbalist, but she's a homemaker as well. And she's a fantastic lady. And so much so that, we had to start a podcast together. And so we have a show called Last Thursday Live. And so last Thursday, basically, we come together every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, and she picks a topic, I pick a topic, and we talk about that. We usually have something special to drink, and we interact with the chat and see what's good. We usually hang out for a couple of hours, something along those lines. And it's kind of just an insight, honestly, into who we really are and what we do. I've said this before, but if you support her, you're supporting me. If you support me, you support her. It's a beautiful thing. So, with all of that said, I think that'll do it. Let me check the chat one last time. Cool. Joshua the Branch is here. What's up, man? Yeah, part 2. I had to do it. There was too many things that I wanted to talk about. It's a little on the shorter side, but that's okay. And then also, a friend of mine sent me some insights that I wanted to get around to as well. Elvis is saying Mario keeps it clear and concise. I appreciate that. Thanks, dude. I try, and when I listen to other shows and they're just going on and on and on, but they're not saying a whole lot, that to me is frustrating. Talk radio is like that. I don't listen to talk radio, but when I've overheard it over the years, I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, they're stretching like 5 minutes worth of content out to like 45 minutes. It's frustrating. So I try and respect your time and respect my time. So I try and do that for people. So thank you for acknowledging that. That's awesome. Am I working with David Block? No, I'm not. I'm not sure. That kind of sounds familiar, that name, but I don't know who that is, I don't think. But no, I'm not. Nice, guys. Awesome. That's going to do it. Until next time, take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend. See ya.